Sorry about that. So this is an addition to a house that I designed in New Hampshire, in a place in New Hampshire. Actually, one of our undergraduate students lived across the street from it. So I'll do a little bit of show and tell about this project. So let me share a different screen. So now I'm sharing an internet browser. And if you go to any Google engine, if I type in 234 Charles Bancroft Highway in Litchfield, New Hampshire, takes you to this street view. Across the street from the house is this school. So I designed a number of buildings on this organic farm. So that the two-story house, can you guys see a big white house? Two big white houses? Okay. So this house here is the main house, and that was built in 1843, like the date on it says. And the original idea is that we were going to knock down that house and build a new energy efficient, what's called a passive house. When the people in the town heard about that, now one of the reasons we wanted to do that, the house was highly energy inefficient because it was built on a very shaky foundation that was just a shallow excavation with a bunch of piles of bricks that were holding up the house, and it was very leaky, very windy, very leaky. When the town heard that we had plans to demo the house, they went crazy. The Historical Society came in and opposed the demolition of the house. At the meetings we had, people wanted, the Historical Society wanted to preserve the house because it was meaningful to the town because of the history. So let me go a little further down. You can see the house. I guess you can't see it all that well there. So that's an old house, and it is over 100 years old, right? So the idea instead that I had, because they needed space not only for the farmers who took care of the organic farm, but they needed spaces for interns to live, people there who were going to study about farming and live in a house and be able to work the field. So the way I went about resolving that problem is I proposed instead to pick up the house 6 feet up off the ground and build a proper foundation beneath it. Can you see a bunch of pictures on my screen? Okay. You see a picture of the house? Okay, good. So this is what we did. I found a company that was able to, this is what the house was like in the basement, right? As we dug out around it before lifting it up. So it was very, very tenuously founded. The foundation was, very, very, very coarse. So we started digging up around it. And these are the guys. This cost about $7,000 to do. I took a bunch of pictures beneath the house because in order to hold the house up, had to design a new set of columns and basement. So this is what's called cribbing. Wood blocks, piles of wood blocks that are railroad ties that were just sort of piled up one on top of the other that the house would rest on, right? And somewhere I have this on film, but I couldn't find it. When the town learned that we were doing this, we went from public enemies to town heroes. People were inviting us home. And it was I learned something really, really important when doing this. That's my pickup truck way back there. I missed that truck, I crashed it. Is how much a place means to people is really important. And these days, the question is not what to build as much as whether to build is a more important question. So the idea of repurposing buildings, the notion of taking either an historical building, an existing building, and repurposing it for a different use. And I think it's really important to do that. And for people who design, well, let me give you a sense of what goes on that farm. They raise chickens, cows, that was the old house before we did anything to it. And then here we are now excavating beneath it, we got rid of all this, the stuff below it. And this is laying the groundwork for the foundation, right? So naturally, pre-COVID, there's the footings. You guys probably won't be designing foundations. And then there's a series of columns placed on top of this, and then we built a full house on top of that. That's the attic. That's the new foundation, right? So this is all the area underneath the house, and you can see the difference, right? So what we decided to do instead is build a house that's attached to this house. This is all going, I'm explaining all this for a reason, and it has to do with diagramming. And I'm going to show you a picture. So do you see a PDF drawing now with a diagram? Is that what you, okay, so I'm showing the screen. So before I started anything here, I basically tried to get an idea of what the client needed. Now, I don't expect you to do as complex a this is what's called a bubble diagram. And what a bubble diagram does is it creates sort of an item list of program elements that your proposed intervention is going to have. Most importantly, it indicates relationships among those things, right? So the drawing of the original house so these are plans that show the new basement, which is over here on the left, and how the first and second floor of the house were going to work. That's phase one, was to renovate, right? Pick that house up off the ground. And then the second phase was to make a set of drawings that explained how we were going to connect. So on the right is the old house, and then there is this, what I call a breezeway that connects the old house with the new house. This is showing the second floor. This is showing the first floor, right? So that drawing on the left is what you guys ought to recognize as the plan drawings that we've been using the second floor of, right? Which is this kitchen view. Let me zoom in on the kitchen. Okay, looks a little bit different than that. I did something slightly different than that. But for the most part, this is what was constructed. So what about a bubble diagram? I'm going to share now. Remember that, and you have plan drawings of this house, right? For the most part, we focused. We're going to focus on the kitchen area, and that's what we're drawing in from different points of view. So let me share. Let's go back to the maps again, right? So you can see what was constructed here, right? So for purposes of this class, I make believe that all this stuff isn't there, and we just sort of, highlight the different aspects of this house. Okay, so let's go back. So what about the bubble diagram? Well, the bubble diagram that I used for the house was much more complex because I had to describe the old house and the new house and all the things that went with it. And I can show you that. But what we want to do for this house is create an inventory of the elements, the design, the programming elements in this house. And it's really as simple as imagining yourself walking through the house. Let's imagine that we start. So we want to create a bubble diagram. And the bubble diagram is not a scale drawing, right? The diagram doesn't represent things in relation to each other in accordance with how large they are relative to each other. But they indicate proximity, relationships to each other. So we start with just identifying what are the parts of the house. Entrance. Right? I don't know why I'm getting, oh, I see. You could think of this as a narrative. How do I experience this house? Really, when I go to this house, if I look at the place in New Hampshire, I really ought to start with driveway. Right? Because I drive up to the house. And then I enter the garage. Then, depending on if I drive a car into the garage, let's number these. 1, driveway. 2, garage. 3, entrance. There's more than one entrance, right? If I were walking from the street, right? And again, remember, I'm ignoring the fact that this is actually connected to the house, and there are doors on the other side, and we will back and forth be referencing the plan drawings. I don't think that I sent you both the first and second floor plans. I have them here, and I think I posted them up on Blackboard. Okay? But consider this. If I drive into the house, I enter into the garage, right? So we have an automobile here. This is a garage. That's number 2. Then I have an entry from the garage, but I also have an entry from outside. Right? What else have I got here? What are the other elements in this house? Well, in this house, I have an elevator in these drawings. We did not build an elevator into this house. Surprisingly, one this size actually fits. And again, that was to present you guys with something that had with an accessible solution to this simple 2-story house. So we have an elevator. That's number 5. I don't really get into the house until I enter into the stairwell. So the stairwell, let's call that 6. Yeah, I didn't give you guys this. If you want to print them, it isn't real terribly important right now. What's important is that you follow along how I arrive at this laundry list of things for purposes of creating a bubble diagram, right? The stairwell has a component too that has an entry door. Let's call that 6A. There's actually a vestibule here. So in a sense, you could say that that is a precursor to entering the house. So very often you'll have a vestibule. Let's call that number 7. If there's a term or a word that I use that you don't understand, please ask me about it. I will otherwise assume that you've heard the word vestibule before. I'm looking at this drawing. I noticed something that I forgot. There's another entry exit from the garage. And in the real house, this actually goes to the breezeway. Breezeway is a term used to connect buildings that aren't otherwise attached. Sometimes they're enclosed outdoors. I just discovered that my pen comes apart. I think I'm going to use a different pen. What a stupid design. Let's go to the second floor. Oh, did I identify the stairway? Yeah. So when I get to the stairway is when I begin to enter into the house. So this you have a plan of. Let me make sure that these drawings are on Blackboard. I also created, thank you, Anna, for writing me early this morning or whatever time it is where you are, that I had forgotten to put assignments on Blackboard. So now there's a place where you can put things. So there's a folder called Plans and Section. I mean, there's a PDF file called Plans and Section. I'll email it to you as well because it's tiny. I don't know. Zoom is telling me move this window away. Do you see something different? I don't know what's going on. All right. I call this a farmhouse. And then I'm going to also attach to that the complicated bubble diagrams I have with the two houses. way more complex than what we're going to do for the class, but just to give you an idea of what those things look like. The second floor, I have a living and dining area, right? I mean, presumably I could call them separate areas. So let's call living, make that 9. Dining, the elevator occurs here as well, right? I mean, remember an elevator, you guys aren't responsible for constructing an elevator. But in terms of planning for an elevator, you have to draw every place that elevator stops, right? So if you're drawing a floor plan of the first floor and the second floor, you got to draw those elevator stops. And then whoever the elevator manufacturer is going to, it's his or her business to figure out how to build that. But for all intents and purposes, you have to allocate the amount of space and the walls that surround that elevator. So your job is that. I've had students agonize over how do I build an elevator? I don't know anything about elevators. You don't have to build an elevator, but you have to indicate where the elevator stops and the walls, the wall enclosures that wrap it. We have a kitchen. Right? Some things are missing in this drawing because I'm not sure why, but I'm missing the island. There's a bathroom. And a bedroom. What's that? Let's see if I left anything out. Let's go. That's a mechanical room, right? I'm just using numbers, but that isn't necessarily. So this is a list of the elements in my HVAC, means heating, ventilation, air conditioning, otherwise known as a mechanical room. I left out exit 2. There's another door over here. So at some point, you have an inventory of constructed bubble diagram, right? Now you will normally do what I'm working backwards. There's a significant difference between backing into a set of drawings. I'm showing you how the bubble diagrams correspond and explain how the building worked. But you will start with something and you'll say, just imagine somebody told you, I need a house on this organic farm. And I need for all these things. You know what I've been told? What we were told by real estate agents. Some multifamily housing that we design, the realtors who were women looked at the plans and said, I could tell these plans were designed by men. And we looked at each other and we said, yeah, you're right. Well, what makes you say that? Because there's no place, there's no storage. There's no place to store anything. So I learned a lesson that was a long time ago, to be really careful about providing for storage, because I don't know if it's a gender related deficiency, but it seems to be true that men are prone to leaving out storage. So for instance, if I were putting together a bubble diagram to examine, let me see what I have in the bubble diagram I did for the farmhouse. Let me share that screen again. Okay. Laundry, heavy duty mudroom. Keep in mind now, this is two houses and a mudroom or breezeway that negotiates between them, that connects the two of them. Living, dining, kitchen, pantry, handicap accessibility, a casual entrance. One of the things the owners describe is that we want to come home and there ought to be a place where when I enter the house, I go directly into the kitchen because I want to drop off groceries or things that I've purchased. How many people live in a house where there's a separate entrance to the kitchen, or you go into the house and you go straight into the kitchen, right? There are reasons for that. Okay, so the only place this must have been after I was a little bit, the only place I use the word closets is by bedrooms, bathroom, linen, closet, built-in cabinets. This program is getting much more refined. Anyway, I like to tell little anecdotes like that because it helps people remember something about what that exercise was. Let me go back to my share. So I may want to add things here. Storage. what can you think of this missing in this? If you weren't looking at a house right now and you're just looking at this list, what can you think of this missing? Anybody want to suggest something?
An office?
Yeah. I mean, adding an office is going to make this place bigger, but if an office is part of the program, we might need a bigger house, right? If it's going to be a separate office. A coat closet, maybe, coats. Let's see, 15, 16. This could be a home office. Be creative. Think if there's something that you want to test out, you want to add to it, right? This is you're not going to get graded on the accuracy of your bubble diagram. We're doing this exercise to understand the purpose of the bubble diagram. So now we need relationships between these things. And I think one way to think, I don't know why that happened. One way to think about that, I always draw on trace, so why change things?
Sandro, is it a laundry room?
Oh yeah, a laundry room would be a good idea, right? And that's okay to think of things I may have missed. Laundry, 18. One way to think about organizing a bubble diagram. Can you see what I'm writing? Let me draw it with a thicker. Pen. Let me find one. If this gets too heavy, I will resort bubble diagram. What does NTS mean? Anybody know?
Not to scale.
Yeah. When people see a bubble diagram, they know that, right? So I'm going to start anywhere. Garage. I think I identified the driveway. Right? So very simply, I go from here to here. I have a garage entrance. That's kind of like the back door. I think we identified it as being back there, right? Did I separate the vestibule? I did. When you do this on the computer, it's a lot easier because you can move these things around. When you're drawing, it's so easy. You quickly paint yourself into a corner. So already I'm starting to see, okay, there's a vestibule, but wait a minute. There's another way into the house. That vestibule also connects the entry that second entry. What did I call it? Entry 2. Let's just make it entry 2. And maybe I didn't identify it, but that's from the backyard. So I'm creating a drawing of the house, of a house, by identifying a sequence of design elements that are connected together, that have a relationship to each other. Where do I need to go next? I've got to enter the stairwell. So the stairwell has an entry. Six A. To stair. How do I get to the apartment? I have to go up the stairs, right? Is there any other way to get into the apartment? How else could I get into the apartment? I'll give you a hint. It begins with the letter E.
The elevator.
Yeah, right? This is what I mean about painting yourself into a corner. Where does the elevator fit into all this? How about is that right? I go into the garage, I can get to the elevator. I can also do this. Now, see, here's where I'm, again, backing into this is a little bit different. Entry sequence into the house. If I came in, if this is my backyard, this thing barely writes. Let's try something else. Backyard. Oh no. Whatever. I can bypass the stairwell by doing that. And how do I explain that here? Backyard. You can see how quickly he gains control of this. Let me add the numbers. Garage entrance. So that was garage entry was 3. 4, what was 4? That's the backyard entrance. That was 4. I haven't even drawn the stairs yet. Why? Because there was a consideration of an alternative way to get into. So I can go from the backyard to the second entry. Then I got to go back out. Oh, I'm in the vestibule. Then I got to go back out the garage entry. To the elevator. So that has a connection, right? Elevator and the garage entry. Well, I'm sorry. Technically, I'd go back into the garage and then to the elevator. So here's my path. This never comes out right the first time. Of course, it's different when you have designed the space, but you're thinking about how things fit together. What haven't I drawn yet? The stair. Where do I end up? When I enter the house from the elevator.
In the living room.
Very good. Where do I end up when I enter the house through the stair? I would say pretty much the dining room, right? once you get to a point and you start looking at the plan and now you think, all right, I'm here. What can I get to from here? I can get from living to dining. I'm missing yet kitchen. I can get from dining the kitchen. I can get from living the kitchen. I'm going to cheat. Let's hope the wind doesn't blow this away. I have a bedroom. Bath. I left out office. And I don't have an office in the plan. Where would I add it in my bubble diagram? If you didn't have a drawing in front of you, how would you think about where would the office go? Can somebody suggest a way of thinking about where would the office go? I don't have drawings, but I'm making one of these.
Off the living room?
Yeah, that's one option. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but where else could it go?
Could it go next to the dining room? Or like by the stairs?
It could go there. Okay, here's another way of thinking about what am I looking at here in general? What's another way of organizing what's going on over here? Or what's a way of identifying or another way, another grouping? Well, floor level, right? I'm not going to drive into the dining room, right? That's probably unlikely. No, sorry. Yeah, level 1. Maybe somebody would have a preference for the office to be able to get to the office and bypass the house altogether, right? So maybe somebody wants that to happen. Naturally, the plan's going to have to get modified. I had a client whose house I designed that incorporated an office nook into the kitchen. He actually wants to add on to that house. So if that were the plan, you might have an intersection, right? One of the difficult things about a space like this, I am always trying to mask the entry to a bathroom from the eating area. So what I actually did here was I created a wall just so that people had to go around. All right, so I took some liberties with changing these drawings, but the idea that technically in this drawing, you can go from the kitchen to the bath. Mask wall. Again, it's a different exercise when you're, I'm trying to straddle thinking in the abstract about this house that you're designing and then working from the plan of a house that's already built. Let me get a piece of tape because the air heat is going to blow things around. I actually didn't build this elevator and put a little storage area underneath the stair landing. I'll show you some pictures of that afterwards. There appears to be a direct route between the bedroom and the bathroom. That's good. There's a route from the kitchen to the bedroom. I could have identified this area as a whole. In which case, the whole negotiates I would have to correct all this, right? So I go from kitchen to hall and then the bath. Kitchen to hall to bedroom. Living to hall to bedroom. To get to the closet, go through the bedroom first, right? What a mess. What's another way I could have made this drawing? I'm not going to prevent you from being creative and thinking through other ways of presenting or communicating the same information. All right, if you want these to be round, I suppose you could do something like that. This would make life you get the idea, right? Suddenly I'm free to move these things around and really think about. So what I'm doing is thinking about I start with, I've got to build a house. I think about the experience of
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I inadvertently turned that off. Could you not hear me throughout?
No, it was just like the last like 30
Less
seconds.
than, okay, good. You could hear me do this. Cut these things. So that's a way of thinking about it. Or maybe you do this with pieces of paper and then you draw it. I don't want to limit you in maybe you make something that you can, that's three-dimensional, right? But so what's a bubble diagram? This is what a bubble diagram is relationships. And it's useful to think of a narrative. What's a narrative? A story. Time. Proximity. Sequence. After a while, when you have an idea for a program, or when you have an idea for a thesis or a studio, a proposed use, you think systematically about those elements. This is before you've allocated, you've even decided how big they're going to be. This is a process of identifying what the parts are. What moving parts does this thing have? Then you can decide whether color is appropriate, has anything to add to it. People colorize these all the time. I never do, but then I'm a boring architect, and maybe I sort of leave out a lot of things that people find more interesting. So have a go at what you see on the second floor, maybe what you don't see on the second floor of the drawing, maybe what you'd want to add, and then have a little discussion about what that might imply for the space. Usually when you go through it once, you discover a bunch of things that didn't quite work and you have to do over again, right? It isn't important that this fits together as compactly as I've done here. Naturally, a lot of attempts came before constructing something this concise. And again, remember, this came before I started designing the house. you want to make sure that you identify all of the elements that are there. That's what a bubble diagram is for. Let's take a 10-minute break. And we can get started on this. You can work on that this afternoon, and I'll take questions as well with, we'll see what modifications we can make to this. I'll just leave this up on the screen. I put on Blackboard a place for the assignments. I hope you guys found them. Anybody need help understanding how that works? You want me to walk through it? I may as well. So I have a way of simulating what you guys would see. This is what I see on Blackboard. And if I go into student preview, here's what I see. So let's say I wanted to submit an assignment for Folio 1. 3 drawings, you have 3 ink drawings and one, they're all drawings of the church courtyard, and one of them is black and white Prisma on gray paper, and one of them on tan or cardboard or whatever you choose, some other. Let me find a place where I have. So you click on assignment. I don't know, this thing requires you to have possible number of points, so I just put a number there. So you can browse. If you scan your documents, make sure you scan them at least 300 pixels, 300 resolution. So let me navigate over to a place I know there are drawings. Student work, let's see. No. So I guess this doesn't allow you to preview, so you have to kind of know what you're putting. All right, let's see. If you submit the drawing, then it's going to come. I don't know what it's doing. That's a drawing of what it looks like if I look at that part of my studio. Okay. I don't know how to submit more than one thing. Does anybody know how this works? I've never used this on Blackboard before.
So the easiest way that I did
Yeah.
it is to browse local files,
Yeah,
and you can press like
multiple,
yeah, you press command and then click on each photo that you want to add, and then you just submit them.
but it doesn't let you modify or go back or do anything or change?
I don't think so. Once you submit, I don't think so, but
Okay, so, but I ought to be able to change that. I mean, that seems like a drag. What if you make a mistake? All right, I need to work on that, but anyway, and I know some of you have emailed me some stuff, but I'd like you to start collecting things here. Maybe I'll just create.
what one of my professors does is
Yeah.
that she creates a discussion post, and you just like you can add all your pictures on there, and if you forget something or you need to change something, you can reply to your own post and then like fix that or add another picture. And then that way everybody can see everybody else's drawings. And
Oh, I see. Because this way you can.
yeah, I don't think you can with this way.
Okay. Yeah, I don't particularly like that. All right, let me give that a discussion. Oh, is that here? Discussions, this thing?
Yeah, it is.
So any of you can start a discussion?
So you create
I have to create it.
yeah, and then we reply to it. So portfolio 1, then we add in our pictures
Oh,
and see everybody else's pictures as well.
oh,
And replies to it also.
all right. Well, let me think that through, and I'll have something that I think will work for us in place. And I'll let you know this afternoon. All right. Meanwhile, I scanned the drawing. I'm going to exit the preview and delete the data. Floor plans. Okay, I'm going to add them to this folder. Ugh, this is so confusing. Let me create a new thing. Bubble diagram. In class 3/2/2021. Browse. Scans. Okay, so that is up on Blackboard. I'll see you this afternoon, guys. Thank you very much for doing the surveys. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Thank you.